All right, let me do a quick pass on how I chose to compress the snare. I'm going to play the snare without any compression and then kind of go through these settings, and I'll leave the bass on and off. Here's the snare by itself. This is a low snare. This is a 8-inch by 14-inch snare. It's basically a short tom. I've tuned it down. I put tape on the top, tape on the bottom. This doesn't sound like a snare. There's no crack to the snare. It's all splat. I'm looking for that low end smack. It's almost like if you take a stick and you hit a pillow, there's this low end thud, but dead. That's exactly how I did it. This is one of my snares at the studio. That's how I tune it, and it stays tuned that way, and I put it in the shelf and I pull it up for this type of effect. The attack is 62, the release is 118, ratio 3:1, no sidechain. And this is tuned so low that I want to make sure that I am creating some distance from the kick. This snare is reproducing frequencies down at 60 hertz, which is the punch of the kick. It's the low end punch of the kick. So what I realized is that there's not this height movement with the snare where kick snare, kick snare, kick snare. It was almost like kick snare, kick snare, kick snare. So I'm trying to extend the kick up to have this upward movement. Sorry, the snare up, so there's upward movement. On and off compression. Notice on this first setting, I'm adding more thwack, more of that low end punch, and I'm compressing it quite a bit. And that low end 100 to 200 point push going forward, I'm not emphasizing the snare wires that rattle there. Okay. Uh, Setting 2, I've now decided to do an attack of 11, really fast attack, and a release of 40. So that means what? I'm just concentrating on those high frequencies. I didn't quite like enhancing the low end punch, although it sounded cool. I'm going to try something in the opposite realm. Let me just try to enhance or do something to the top end. Here we go. That's a noticeable difference. That really gave it height. There's still some sort of punch, but it's not a low end punch. It's more of a upper register 600 to 900 punch. And what really happened is you hearing the snare buzz extend, and it's not a snappy snare buzz because it's tuned so low. It's more like white noise burst type of thing. So I'm bringing out that white noise burst as a way of extending the decay of just the high frequencies. Even though it's 40 milliseconds, which is really quick, you're hearing enough. You're hearing it more than enough, right? So these two settings are still following the frequency theory. Shorter attack, shorter release is affecting more top end. Slower attack, longer release is affecting more the low end. Next setting. Same attack and release, I now have engaged the snare sidechain. And this is what's happening on the sidechain. 940 and above is getting rolled off. So there's no crack. That crack tends to be from 2K to 4K. That's ignored. The stick hit, the sound of the stick hitting it, that gets ignored also. So all that high frequency transient ignored. 228 below is ignored. The fundamental, the first harmonic, is a little below that. So I'm telling the compressor, don't hear the fundamental, start compressing on that second harmonic. Let's hear what happens. That's an even more drastic change. I'm hearing more of that buzz to it, but now I'm hearing the snare get a little punchier on the lower range. I have extended that punch from that kind of 600 to 800 range, and now I'm hearing a little more of that 400 punch. Next setting, I decided to, let's exaggerate this. Still a really quick attack of 13, but the release is 614. Why not? I've basically figured out how long I need to extend a release so that the release of one snare hit doesn't extend into the next snare hit. And you can do that by doing the math of, here's the BPM, here's the like, you go to a delay chart and it tells you what the delay for quarter note, eighth note, 16th note is, and then that's what you set as your release time. So you are compressing the snare for the full amount of a quarter note, eighth note, 16th note, 32nd note. That's one way to do it. Or you can just kind of visually look at the meter so it releases right before the next hit. No sidechain. Here we go. This kind of gets even more interesting and more interesting, because now you're not hearing the more, but you are hearing some high-end snap to it that you weren't hearing it before. But now that low-end punch that we were getting on the first compression setting is back, and it sounds more open. Next setting. I decided I like the attack, quick attack, slow release, and I decided to just kill the snare. Let's do 100 to 1, severely limiting the snare instead of a 3 to 1. Tone change isn't that drastic. What is drastic is the dynamic movement. I have completely limited that dynamic movement. Before, on the previous setting, when it was 3 to 1, it moved forward and then away, but it moved in front of the bass. I decided maybe I don't want that snare to be in front of the bass. I want it to sit just smack behind of the bass. You feel that push, but it doesn't distract from the bass. Just pay attention to the bass, and I'm going to change from the previous setting 3 to 1 and the new setting 100 to 1. Here we go. That's pretty apparent, right? So here is tone shaping and dynamic control and placement all shaped here. This is enough of the top end that I need, and getting just enough of the low end that I need. The snare sounds better. It sounds higher. I'm not exaggerating that white noise, which was cool, but I thought I would get tired out of it after a while. But then now it's sitting where I need it to sit. Let's move on.